And welcome to the first episode of the Pro Scouting Podcast. We're your hosts, Steve and Dan. So, Dan, why are we not operating under the name Beyond the Goal? Why is our podcast name different today?
Well, Stephen, this is our special podcast where we just, we cover some topics that, they're not related to the games that have just happened. They don't expire with time. These are the topics that, there might be issues in soccer, different cool things going on that, you could listen to now, you could listen to later, or you could listen to it multiple times. Just sort of a special series where we cover special stuff.
Yeah, well, sweet. Cool. Well, today's topic is the FIFA Club World Cup. And it's kind of controversial. Your Chelsea FC recently won it. The first time in their history they won it, because I was very happy that they lost it back in 2012. I'm just
you're only happy about that because your team that you go for, Barcelona. How did they get out of the Champions League? But I just can't quite remember. I don't know if the fans at home, the maybe non-existent fans, I don't know if there is, but I don't know if they know too how Barcelona
best fan base in the world.
Did you want to?
Best fan base in the world.
Did you want to remind us how you got eliminated in that one?
Well, it was a few years ago. I can't really remember. I'll have to.
Well, I'll
look it up later.
One Fernando Torres, an out of form Fernando Torres, mind you. With a beautiful, 50-meter run in on goal. Sort of Victor Valdez, a great goalkeeper. There's no disputing that. Had no chance at stopping him, and he scored that. We went on to beat Bayern in their own backyard, and I guess went on though to lose the Club World Cup. So. But what does that mean? Is that is it a bad thing? Does that taint the win of the Champions League? And that's the sort of stuff we'll be covering here today, isn't it, Steve?
100%. And can I just say, that was literally the only thing Fernando Torres did at Chelsea, was that goal against Barcelona. Everything else,
that's not true. He missed
a liability for.
He still did that. But okay, well, yes. Chelsea does have a habit of, wasting. Well, I don't know if it's a waste, but they spend money on good strikers and they do lose them, but that might be another, episode for this podcast.
Actually, that's a good topic because Timo Werner as well. He's pretty average.
Timo,
right,
what about Lukaku? I don't know.
That's what I was going to say.
That didn't come in your head, but again, let's move on. I think we'll cover that at some point. Maybe we'll cover that once Lukaku gets his form back and becomes a legend. But anyways, moving on. So, Steve, I don't know. Do you fully understand this competition, the Club World Cup, or as we should say, probably the FIFA Club World Cup, or are you a bit unsure how it all works, or what's your understanding of it?
Yeah, I know that the teams from different confederations are ranked differently because of the strength of their confederations and their sort of own Champions Leagues. So I think you have an explanation for it though. So you want to go through it?
Yeah, sure. I can cover it off there. So there's 4 rounds of football that are covered in this. So the first round, we have 2 teams coming in. We have the team from Oceania Champions League, as well as the nation that's hosting it. Their winner of their pro football league, they verse off in a game, and then the winner of that game proceeds. The loser, unfortunately, that's them done, and they're moving into the second round. So the winner of that first round, they come in. They also are joined by the winner of the African Champions League, as well as the North American and the Asian Champions League. So those teams all join up together and play off. Moving into the third round, we have our semi-finals. And this is where, I probably this year started to, this is the only sort of start of the competition for me as a Chelsea fan, because UEFA Champions League winner, they come in, as does the South American Champions League winner. As then the 2 from that second round, they come down. I'm not quite sure how which team we get drawn against. I assume there'd be just a draw for that. And then the 2 winners of the semi, self-explanatory, they move into a final. That's sort of how that all works. There wasn't great coverage for the FIFA Club World Cup this year on any platform that I could find to watch that in Australia. I looked at every option. I have a lot of soccer, platforms I pay for. It's very expensive being a soccer fan, but couldn't watch it. So I didn't have this understanding But yeah, so I don't know the proper names for all the Champions League. Steve, I know you're up with all that stuff. Why don't you run through that and let us know sort of who made it through this year for the Club World Cup from each Champions League?
Yeah, so like let's just say, the teams from UEFA and CONMEBOL are usually the teams playing in the final. Brazilian teams have done really well over the last few years. So this year we had Palmeiras from CONMEBOL, the Copa Libertadores champions, and then Chelsea, obviously, in the UEFA Champions League. They played well through that tournament. And so next it was
the Champions League, that is, or the Club World Cup.
Oh, obviously both because they won them.
I just wanted to hear you say it. That's all.
Al Hilal, AFC Champions League winners. Al Ahly, the CAF Champions League winners. Africa. Hopefully, I pronounced that correctly. Don't shitpost in the comments, please.
Pronunciation is something that we we highly pride ourselves on in this podcast.
Well, I just try to be better than you in that regard. So,
okay. Well, it looks like the podcast is over. Goodbye.
So next we got Monterrey from CONCACAF. Those are CONCACAF Champions League winners. AS Pire from Oceania, I think. And then last was Al Jazeera. It says UAE Pro League winners. So those are the teams this year. Obviously, they change. Proudly being Aussie, we got to see the Western Sydney Wanderers in this tournament. However, obviously, they didn't do well because they're compared to some of those European teams and CONMEBOL teams. Just the skill level is so different.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's hard probably too. Australia sort of tries to operate their seasons at the same time as the rest of the world. So we're playing in summer. Players climatise to that. There's not as much travel as well for your teams in Australia. Yeah, we move around in the Asian Champions League, but then to go into another competition against those big components, it's great exposure though. And it would have, for the club, it was a great thing. And yeah, being Australian, I don't really follow the A-League and I don't follow the Wanderers, but I was so proud and excited that they made it there. It was amazing, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Because we've never seen, an A-League team get to a tournament like that coming up against. Well, they didn't actually play a European team, but in that same tournament. So yeah, if you want to go through the history as well of some of these wins. So obviously Chelsea versus Palmeiras, a 2-1 win. You didn't watch that game, or you did?
I did watch that game. Yeah. So I actually no, that is correct. Sorry, I watched highlights after. I tried to find as many as I could because I couldn't get proper coverage of it. I try to watch every Chelsea game I can. So I was really upset to not be able to watch it. But yeah, it's a hard one. Like Chelsea, we did all right. Lukaku getting on the score sheet, which was great. But a bit hard for me to comment too much on the game because just saw highlights. So I'm not sure, exactly how it went down. But but I guess the thing that we want to cover here today is how important is this competition? Well, if we want, it's a cup. How important is this cup? What does it mean to the players, the club? So the club covering the owners, staff in there, and to the fans. We all know what the your league, your nation's league sort of means. So even here in Australia, the A-League, that's the top form of football here in Australia. And we just talked about the Western Sydney Wanderers when they won the Asian Champions League and how we were so proud for them going to the FIFA Club World Cup. Now, was that even there? Was the excitement the fact they were partaking in that Club World Cup? Or is it the fact that they're only there partaking because they won the Asian Champions League? And is that where the excitement is? So that's some of the stuff we're going to cover today. So I guess a good way to segue into that, Steve, is we talk about, I go for Chelsea. Chelsea just won the Club World Cup. You're a fan of Barcelona. And 2015 was the year that you took it out, as well as a few other times before that, where we got 2011, being the other time. So yeah, let's delve into how those wins made us feel and what it was. Why don't you start off there, Steve, with your 2015 victory?
Yeah, no, it was more of a thing where they just had to get it done. I didn't really care too much for it. It's just because it's not really super hyped up at this FIFA Club World Cup. Back in 2015, Barca beat River Plate, and it was a good game. I actually watched it 3-0. So that was cool. But you look back on the history of the champions of this tournament, and it's just European team. Outlier was Corinthians, obviously 2012, and then you go back even further, 2006, 2005, Sao Paulo and Internacional, the Brazilian teams. So it's heavily in favor of those bigger nations, confederations. I can't see an Oceania team winning this tournament.
Well, I think it's important to note there too, just for the listeners out there. So this competition, it started in 2000, but took a different format to the one that I explained before. And so 2000 was the first year that it occurred, with the second time this competition occurred being 2005, and that was in the current format. Sorry, just thought that was important to mention. But you're right. So if you look through the list of all the winners, it's the European Champions League, or the UEFA Champions League to be more precise, winners that have taken it out each time, with the outlier being that 2012 the first season, as well as the 2012 one where Chelsea didn't win it. And I don't know, that sort of tells me, looking at that, that now we don't want to sound bad here and saying that the European Champions League team is better or something necessarily than the others, but I think Europe is the center of football. Obviously, South America has a big following too. But it's no lie, European Champions League, I think, to me, is the pinnacle of club football.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
so the fact that they've come through every time and won it, with Chelsea being the one that didn't, that shows me they take it, whether it be they take it seriously, or the fact that it looks bad to lose it, they've come out and won it, they've performed. And I know for Chelsea coming into this one, with our owner, Roman Abramovich, he's won every trophy that's been available to him at Chelsea, except for this one. So it's very important for him to come through and get that win. In 2012, the job didn't get done. And I don't think any Chelsea fans are sitting there long-term, losing sleep over the fact that we didn't win the comp. But we definitely wanted to win it. And I know I was keen to get that. It's another piece of silverware for a club. And now just to quickly mention that Chelsea has won everything, best club in the world ever. So
all right, that's enough. That's enough. We don't need to hear this. But I was just going to say before, it sort of shows the difference between international football and club football, in terms of how different they are. Because obviously Europe just dominates club football because all the money's going there. All of the best players from around the world go to play there. But in a World Cup, it's a lot more even. You see definitely the South Americans and Europeans obviously getting further into the tournament, but some of these African nations do make it through to the later rounds, even Asian countries too. So it just shows the difference between club and international football. And international football, I love watching. It's just a different, I don't know, it's a different type of football because the players they're from the same countries, they speak the same languages, but they don't play with each other every day. So it makes it a lot harder when you're coming up against, these other huge nations who have, football is their sport. They are the best at that. So like Spain, Germany, whatever it is. So I just think it's cool seeing the difference between that, because the FIFA Club World Cup is just the skill level is just completely just different in these different confederations.
Yeah, but I get that point you make, but what you were saying there about the nations, and I guess you're pulling on, you've got your nations like your Brazil and your Spain and stuff that have such a love for football. I think some of that still translates though into this competition, into the Club World Cup, because example, Chelsea played Palmeiras there, and I was listening to some of the stats after the game, and in terms of the fans in the stadium, it was all Palmeiras, like predominantly, not all, but predominantly it was Palmeiras there. And now this is a final of a competition, regardless if you want to say, you don't think much of it or you do, all these fans from Brazil, traveled. Like, I don't think there is necessarily some big influx of Palmeiras fans that live in the UAE and just happen to be like, oh, cool, our team's playing, we can come on down. No, they traveled. These are loyal fans that are crazy for football. And whilst, maybe, the Brazil National League's not up there in the top 5 leagues in the world, and then, they've got a team coming against Chelsea who plays in, whether you believe this or not, I think the league that is ranked probably the best league in the world. And in many ways, it's something that we might cover in another, another pod. They had all these followings, they've got these supports, and in that stadium, I'm pretty sure it would have felt like a Palmeiras home game. And they're going there, they're serious. So if the skill might not quite be there, Chelsea's team's obviously worth crazy amounts of money. We spent over 100 million pounds on Lukaku, you know what I mean? I think in soccer still money talks, but it's not fully just that. You've got a team that's there and they're hungry. And listening to, some, different people talk about it, the Brazil nations always go there with a strong following, because this means a lot. They're going to come up against, the likes of Chelsea, Barcelona, Bayern Munich. They want to get a result. So, I think in that regard, Chelsea went up against really good competition, and it showed. And yeah, Chelsea's in a struggling situation at the moment, but yeah, it was an important game. But I guess that moves into the point of how do the players, preparing for this game? What do we see, their views on it? Because we saw like Kai Havertz score the penalty late in the Palmeiras game, well, actually in extra time, and which won it. And, he celebrated like very similar to when he scored the winning goal of the Champions League. So what's your view? Do you see that as, Kai Havertz sees that goal as, on the same level as scoring in the Champions League final? Or is that fake to you? Is he faking that? What do you take that as?
No, I just think as players, you want to win regardless of, whatever tournament it is. I think Champions League, I don't know, like Champions League might mean more to him. We don't know than the Club World Cup. We won't know that, but a goal's a goal in a final of an international tournament. You're going to celebrate like crazy. But yeah, I don't know. I think the FIFA Club World Cup, in terms of how players and clubs perceive it, I still think it's a major, tournament on their schedule for them. Like they would treat it like any other big international tournament. But fans, I just don't think care as much for it in Europe. Like you were saying before about obviously those Brazilian, the Palmeiras supporters treating it like a home game and filling up that stadium. But I just think, the European teams, they don't really care as much about this, but they have to they want their team to win it, but, they're not going to like lose sleep over this, because for them, it's more about their leagues and then the Champions League if they're in that. So that's what I think about that point.
There is still, I think it's important to mention, there's still significant financial benefits to winning it. I think I've seen multiple different numbers flying around there, but there's millions of dollars to be won for winning this competition. There's no doubt about that. And just an interesting thing, I guess, about the way that European maybe competitions and nations view this comp. So Chelsea has the crest or emblem or whatever you want to call it of, FIFA Club World Cup champions that they're now currently displaying on their jerseys, and have just been approved that they can wear that for the remainder of the EPL season this season. Whereas in the past, there's been teams that haven't been able to display the crest. So I'm not sure if that's a shift in showing that, there's a bit more support for it or not. I'm not too sure. But one thing that I've seen mixed comments on, so I can't really judge, especially that I wasn't able to watch extended amounts of the game, and obviously wasn't at the game, unfortunately. Would have loved to be. But it's the reaction of Roman Abramovich. So just for you out there that don't know it, that's Chelsea's wonderful owner, who
A Russian mobster.
So much life. Yeah, so we won't get into that part of it. I'm not going to comment on the political side. Sorry, I probably shouldn't be using the words wonderful. But he's injected a lot of money into Chelsea and a lot of life into Chelsea. And he wanted to get the result, and I think he put a lot of pressure onto the club and onto the players. And there was some underperforming games before leading into this competition. I think I'm taking that as there was a pressure on, they need to go and win this, because once they won this competition, he's won everything available to him, every trophy available to him since he's owned the club. But in saying that, I've also seen mixed reviews of when Kai scored the penalty and was celebrating, and the Chelsea fans that were there were going wild, of him just sort of sitting back casually, clapping a little bit. And in that way, you sort of take it as, is that cool? Some people saying that's like, I don't really care. I sort of take it as is, he probably would have wanted Chelsea to go out and dominate the game, and it went to extra time. So that even shows there that maybe he didn't see Palmeiras as a team on the same level as Chelsea, and he probably thought we should have went out there and pumped them. He still wants to win the cup, still wants to take home that trophy, be victors, but maybe he wants a 2-0, 3-0, even a 4-0 victory, and an absolute, whitewash of the comp. And I think that's what those, your big clubs coming in, that's what they want. That's what they're looking for.
Yeah, for sure. Like, definitely a pay to win owner. That's what all of them are. But let's just say, Chelsea's Abramovich has been there for a long time now. He's spent a lot of money, and they're winning. They're winning, but that's where Newcastle want to be now. They've just got a new owner. He's injecting a lot of money. He's the richest owner in the world, actually, by a lot.
Well, his net worth is worth more than all the net worths of every, excluding him, obviously, all the other Premier League owners' net worths combined is less than his personal. Big money going into there.
Oh, for sure. Did you want to touch on anything else with this topic?
Yeah. I think we've covered a little bit. We haven't gone into great depth now. We can't comment too much, I guess, on the players' views. We can just talk on what we sort of see of them, like what we see on TV as a fan and that. But I think the other thing is, maybe where do you see this competition going in the future, and whether it be actually going there, or where would you want to see it going? Would you want to see a different format, maybe something that only runs every couple of years, and maybe is some more big clubs going into it or something like that?
Yeah, so I know FIFA's got has sort of a format that they wanted to push. It was like a 24-team FIFA Club World Cup tournament, but there are a few different options, and it's so hard because this runs through the season and only a select few teams will actually be in it. So if I was sort of coming up with ideas of how to run this tournament, I would want more European teams in it, more CONMEBOL teams in it, just sort of how the Champions League is run, with they're each Spain in La Liga and the EPL in England, they've got their coefficients and how much their league is worth in comparison to Turkey or Greece. So I think they need to sort of rank sort of like what they do with it already, but expanded, because the European teams should be dominating this tournament. So if I had, say, 32 teams laid out like a FIFA World Cup, so we have like 12 teams or whatever, from probably even more from Europe, competing in this tournament. I don't know when it would run. You can't really, maybe you could do it every 4 years and replace the Confederations Cup, the sort of useless warm-up tournament to the World Cup that happens every 4 years. It's a cool tournament, but does it really need to be there? We could replace that with, this FIFA Club World Cup tournament. And I think because it's run every year and it's only a limited amount of teams, it doesn't really have much value. Yeah, that's just what I thought about it, but I'm not sure what you wanted to talk about with the expansion.
Yeah, see, I think there's definitely some exciting things that could happen, and maybe you only run it every 4 years. When you fit that in, I don't know. There's enough football going on at the moment and is all the time. But yeah, you could maybe you make it that you still have the sort of winner of each continent's major competition, sort of Champions League thing come in, and maybe some of your bigger leagues in the world have, like, you know, the winner of that, so maybe the European Champions League and the La Liga winner and the Premier League winner. But the only thing I see happening then is, does it just become another European competition then? Does it just become another form of the Champions League? And that's sort of, maybe that takes away from what they're trying to achieve there. Because yeah, I understand that that this competition is a Club World Cup, and you know, the sort of the Champions League winner coming in, sorry, the UEFA Champions League winner coming in usually tends to be stronger, but we still get to see really good games. You know, we still have, you know, Palmeiras giving Chelsea a run for their money and different clubs doing that. You don't want to lose that, do you? You don't want to just make it another European comp, do you?
But at the same time, it's sort of like the FIFA Club World Cup, how it is run right now, is just super unfair. It's going to be probably a European team versus a CONMEBOL team or CONCACAF team, which even that rarely happens. So I think they do need to expand somehow. And if they want to make it a tournament that people will actually watch, they'll do something like that. But in the meantime, I think if they slowly expand, there'll be more fan interest. But yeah, we don't know yet what FIFA's plans are. And with COVID, that may have screwed things around, might be messing things up a bit. It's a bit hard to do it during a season. You know, there are, 38 games in a league season in some leagues, plus the European games, plus the domestic cup you've got going. It's just so many games going on. It's really hard to fit it in. So I think, you know, every 4 years would, you know, bring up the value of that tournament a bit more. But yeah, it's an interesting
good
concept.
Point you touch on there with the games, because at the moment that's a huge issue with COVID. You know, I don't know if this is happening in every league. I know like La Liga and stuff postponed sort of rounds and stuff, but in the Premier League there was weird stuff going on where they were giving, you know, some teams could get exempt from playing certain games and they could catch them up later, whereas others couldn't. And somehow, you know, well, I follow Chelsea, we'll use them as an example. They couldn't get a sort of games off. We weren't deemed to have been in a position where we had to. Now Chelsea has a really deep squad. There's no lying about that. But we had crazy amounts of injuries and COVID sort of hit. But because we still, you know, might have had 11 players that we could field, you know, we were getting forced to play games. And then that was just creating more injuries because we had players that were playing, you know, like sort of every, I don't know, like there was 2 games a week of maybe Premier League, there was Champions League. We're also in, you know, a couple domestic competitions. So we're playing this. They're sort of pushing themselves to play every 3 games a week, 2 games a week, because there's hardly any players left. This extra competition, that's just another stress. And I know it was something that Chelsea wanted to go win, but it was another stress that they had to deal with. And the players, if you add a bigger competition with more games, it's another stress as well. And yeah, maybe if it only happens every so often, it's fine. But there's so much to consider. You know, there's international football too that they've got to play in. So, you know, the scheduling would be hard. But you're right, there could be exciting prospects there. But yeah, any other sort of lasting sort of thoughts or comments or things you want to get out there about the competition?
I mean, I've always wanted this tournament to be a big deal and to actually mean something. Because FIFA's formats for their tournaments, well, let's just say the FIFA World Cup is every 4 years. You know, there were talks of that being every 2 years, and I would not like that, because then it would just, you know, devalue the actual World Cup and the winners of that. So I think that's what this tournament is also suffering from. So yeah, it's an interesting concept if you had 32 teams in this new tournament, but we'll see what happens. FIFA definitely just want to make money as well. There's no question about that. They're just like any other league in the world. Like,
what, FIFA likes money? I didn't know.
Like the NFL, NBA, they just want to draw as much fan attention to their sports, their leagues, whatever it is, just so they can make money. As much as they pretend to want to help the game, sometimes they just push it too far.
There's money runs soccer, and that's 100% right. And I don't want to get into it too much here, but that's even what sort of went on. I think that's what was fueling the games to sort of not get postponed in the English Premier League this year, because you stop playing games, your TV broadcasters, they're the ones injecting the money. They don't get their money, so clubs were, there was meetings going on between clubs and like players and all that to try to come to an agreement where they could postpone games, because players were going out, they were catching COVID, and if that wasn't what ended up happening, you're getting injuries because you were pushing yourself because your teammates were out and there was no sort of reprieve for you. But games didn't get postponed. The odd ones did, but the season continued, and that's money. But that's a bigger fish to fry than what we're trying to fry in this episode. I don't know if that's a proper saying when you use the fry twice with the fish frying saying, but maybe it will become one. But yeah. But I think we've covered, what our thoughts on the Club World Cup in this pod. If anyone out there's got any different views on it, please, comment, let us know what your views are on it. Would love to hear it. I'm sure, Steve, you'd love to hear other people's views on this too, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. We could have a part 2 to this in 5 or 6 months. So we could cover this again because it's such an interesting topic. Maybe there might be progress with them changing it or whatever, but we'll see how we go.
And I guess in 5 to 6 months' time, Steve, would definitely be confirmed again that Chelsea's returning to this competition for another year because we've won the Champions League again. So
no, sir, it's not happening. Sorry.
No, that's all cool. Well, I think I think that's a wrap for this show here. I hope you've enjoyed, and subscribe to the channel, like the video, and let us know what you think. But yeah, till next time, thanks from Steve and Dan.
Yeah, thanks for listening.